Hello, and welcome to Field Lab Earth, the podcast that's all about past and present advances in the fields of agronomic, crop, soil, and environmental sciences. Happy Halloween, everybody! Today, in honor of spooky times, we'll be talking to Paul Csomo of the award-winning Varmints podcast about a scary agricultural pest, the boll weevil. The boll weevil is a type of beetle that devastated American cotton crops from the 1890s until about the 1970s. Paul and I will discuss its adaptations, its history, and its legacy today. As a special Halloween treat, we'll also have an extra special section tagged on to the end of our show, including scary monster noises. Make sure to listen to the end. I'm your host, Abby Morrison. Let's talk about science. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Happy Halloween. It is spooky times, which means it is time for our Halloween special. This year we have Paul Csomo from the award-winning Varmints podcast with us. Welcome to the show, Paul. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing so jazzed to talk with you about boll weevils today. But first, can you please tell people about your wonderful show?
Sure, thank you. My show is called Varmints. It's all about animals. And every week we take one animal, we look at it through the lens of pop culture. We tell you about that animal's adaptations, and we give you a little bit of trivia, and we give you some conservation information, and we just try to cover an animal as thoroughly as possible in 45 minutes in a way that is entertaining, hopefully educational, and hopefully a lot of fun to listen to. I know it's a lot of fun to make it.
Yeah, and it is a lot of fun to listen to. I am a big fan myself. So yeah, we've got you on the show today, as you well know, to talk about the boll weevil, which is this year's scary Halloween agricultural pest. So I believe you're going to start off and take it away.
Yeah, we're just going to do basically what I do on my show, and the way I started out is I tell you just general information about, in this case, boll weevils. So, boll weevils are a type of beetle that belong to the family I practiced this, I promise. Cercolonidae. Cercolonidae. Let's go with that.
Wow. That is a mouthful.
It's probably wrong. There are 350,000 species of beetles. How many of those do you think are weevils? If you had to guess.
Oh no. I'm gonna go small and say 300.
97,000.
Wow. I lowballed that very much.
About a quarter of all beetles are weevils. That blew my mind.
Wow.
And then there's like several species like the biscuit weevil that are not true weevils.
Okay.
And I run into this a lot where there are like with the robins episode, like there's birds that are called robins, but they're not really robins. And basically all I can picture is like an entomologist at a conference saying something like, okay, biscuit weevil people, there's 97,000 actual weevils. Did you think you were going to try to sneak in?
Yeah.
Like maybe tighten it up and get a different name? Biscuit weevil people.
The only thing I can think of when you say biscuit weevil is Master and Commander, where there's actually weevils in their like biscuits. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It's people who've seen that are part of that crowd, I'm gonna guess. I feel like I'm gonna accidentally upset many entomologists in this episode, so
you know
apologies in advance.
That'll be two of us upsetting entomologists everywhere.
Okay.
They turned it off when I tried to pronounce Cercolonidae, or however that is. They're already gone.
I guess 300, they're like, nope.
Yep, nope.
Okay.
Weevils are found just about anywhere where there are like farms, gardens, orchards, and a lot of times they are named accordingly. So that there are rice beetles, there are maize weevils. Maize, I thought it was just corn. Maize winds up being like a kind of grass, and so like things like barley and sugarcane are included with that. I had no idea. There's, I guess, wheat weevils. And boll weevils. Now, what is a boll? Well, if you look at a cotton plant, you think like of a stalk and some leaves and a big fluffy ball of raw cotton on the top. Well, that fluffy ball of cotton is stored inside a big green thing that looks like a big flower bud or like a seed pod, and that is called a boll. And the boll eventually splits apart, and it exposes that cotton that's inside. The one thing that weevils all have in common is a structure called a rostrum. Now, that rostrum is like an elongated snout. Now, most insects with that elongated snout are using that to, like, suck up liquids like a straw. So, like, I think a mosquito has one, or they're trying to get blood or nectar or some sort of liquid. A weevil's rostrum has mouth parts on the end of it. And then all along the inside, there's a pharynx, there's like a little windpipe, there's all kinds of mouth parts. So it's a lot less like a nose and more like a very, very long neck with a mouth on the end of it. It's kind of terrifying looking. And so they use that long rostrum to dig tunnels into whatever they're eating. So adult boll weevils, they eat almost every part of the cotton plant. They're super destructive to cotton. And then the females lay about 200 eggs inside the cotton that's inside that boll. And inside that fluffy white ball of cotton, the eggs are protected, and then the little young weevil larvae, they eat their way out, and the process starts all over again. The life cycle from egg to adult is 3 weeks, and as many as 10 generations might occur every season.
That's astonishing. That's so many.
It's a lot.
That is many.
It's incredible. It's kind of like I don't even know what you would call it. It's like miraculous.
Yeah,
that people were actually able to control it. Boll weevils are a quarter of an inch, or about 6 millimeters in length, and they are just a very kind of unremarkable brownish black color. They just look like a very boring looking bug. Beetles have been around for 300 million years, way longer than humans. They've survived mass extinctions and ice ages and anything. So, weevils are a quarter of all beetles, so weevils have been around for quite a while. Male and female boll weevils are just called male and female boll weevils, and young boll weevils start as eggs for the first 3 to 5 days. Then they reach the larva stage. Well, they're going to eat nonstop for 8 to 10 days, just on that fluffy ball of cotton in there. Then they enter the pupal stage for another 5 to 7 days. So from egg to adult that can breed and make more eggs is around 3 weeks. It's a huge turnaround. One thing I like to talk about in my podcast is the etymology of words, like where they come from. So the word boll, as we mentioned, is that kind of seed pod, flower bud thing on the cotton plant. And we get the word weevil from several Old English and German words that look and sound a lot like weevil, and those words just mean like small beetle, or just beetles in general. And in the 15th century, that word started to describe a particular kind of beetle that bores into plants and destroys crops. There's also a Proto-Germanic word, webel, which means to weave, like when you weave fabric. And that might come from like the woven appearance of a weevil's larval case. It looks very delicate and woven, not with the boll weevil so much, but with other types of weevils. Also, they may have been found in clothing, so they kind of got that name from there. I also like to talk about the conservation status of all the animals that I talk about. The IUCN doesn't really keep track of boll weevils. Oddly enough. They've mostly been eradicated in the United States, but they definitely still exist. They are definitely still a problem in other parts of the world, like in Brazil with the cotton farms there. They're a huge problem. A collective noun for boll weevils is probably the same as it is for just beetles in general, which is a swarm, a cloud, a plague. There are all sorts of collective nouns. I kind of like, hey, that's a lot of boll weevils. I thought they were gone. I think that's a good collective noun.
Yep. I like it.
Yeah. So one thing we like to talk about in our podcast is where that animal appears in pop culture. And sometimes animals appear in pop culture and sometimes they don't. It's always surprising. We did the episode about porcupines, and there was hardly any pop culture about them. And you would think that there would be no pop culture for boll weevils, but it turns out that they are the mascot for a political party. They're a mascot for sports teams at the University of Arkansas at Monticello. They are the subject of songs, including this one, from the 1990s. I think they're 1990s or early 2000s alternative rock band, the Presidents of the United States. Boll Weevil. I think Boll Weevil is like a popular subject for songs just because the name is so weird, right?
Yeah, that was actually not that iteration of Boll Weevil, but that was actually almost the theme song for our podcast was about Boll Weevils. We obviously did not go that direction, but it was like a strong contender.
Oh, what else, Abby? Oh, I know what else. On every episode, we talk about whether or not we would eat that animal. Just a dumb thing I started doing, and it has stuck around. Abby, would you eat boll weevils?
No.
I think I know the answer. No, probably
Hard
not.
pass. No, thank you.
No. I wouldn't either, but what does eat them are fire ants, spiders, birds, wasps, other bigger insects. And boll weevils are just pretty much playing a numbers game, kind of like cicadas do, kind of like some birds do. You know, if a species can lay millions and millions and millions of eggs, there's just not going to be enough predators out there to eat all of them. Some of them are bound to survive. And, more than enough boll weevils are surviving to keep making little boll weevils. And as we said, in one season, one boll weevil can lay... Oh, I can't do math.
Thousands. We're talking thousands.
20, 30,000 eggs. All potential boll weevils. That's one boll weevil that can do that.
That's crazy.
It really is.
Hey science fans, I hope you're enjoying the show. Interested in learning more? We've got links to more resources, including Paul's podcast, in our show notes. If you're a certified crop advisor or certified professional soil scientist, you can take a quiz for continuing education units for this episode, which can be found in our show notes or on certifiedcropadvisor.org. Let's get back to the show.
So now, this is where I did a little bit of research, but not too much. And the little bit I did was really amazing. And it's the agricultural impact of boll weevils and the heroic effort that was made to sort of get rid of them or make their impact not so bad.
Yeah, so I actually looked into this section. So I know you normally have your animal facts. This is kind of more of an animal epic, historical epic.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is actually a really cool story. I mean, also has like some, harsh elements in it, but is really a great example of science overcoming a huge agricultural problem. So boll weevils came up to America from Mexico in the 1890s. Oh, I should also mention before I get into this that my primary source for like all of this was this really good article by Matt Shipman from NC State. It's from 2017, so some of this information might be a little outdated. But it's called The Boll Weevil War, or How Farmers and Scientists Save Cotton in the South. I'll have links to it in the show notes and also my other resources, but that was where I got most of this from. But anyway, so they came up from Mexico in the 1890s, and in Mexico there's like certain regions where they were just like, no, like, we're done with cotton, I'm done with this, no thank you. And so when they got to America, it's like, oh dang, that's bad news. And really, it was terrible news in that they spread pretty much through all of the cotton-growing regions in the South by the 1920s. It's about 30 years to spread across a large swath of America. And they were actually causing so much damage that it was like 30 to 50% yield loss in the most horribly affected areas, which is just nuts. Which, I mean, when you're talking that many weevils, like, kind of makes sense, but also that's crazy. At the same time, more often it was like 10%, which is still a really big deal. And I actually found out that there was like one specific epidemic of them that helped contribute to the Great Migration, which is when millions of African Americans moved north between 1916 and 1970 for a variety of reasons related to often, racial prejudice, poor economic hopes. And the Boll Weevils even were bad enough one year that it was the final straw for some people to move away.
Wow.
Yeah, super crazy. Like, really big deal. But at the same time, it caused this weird, inverse reaction at the same time, because as the cotton crops were being destroyed, the price of cotton went up. So there was kind of this wave where people were trying to get ahead of them and just grow the heck out of cotton for a while until the boll weevils could catch up. So there's this wave, an increase in cotton production, because they're like, better make cotton while you can, or we'll never have it ever again.
They're trying to stay ahead of the boll weevils.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know. And so it's crazy to think that this pest was that big of a deal, that it was making those huge decisions for people. So the story kind of stays the same until 1958, which, is 60 years after they've shown up. So it's this is 130 years of history going on here. So 1958, the National Cotton Council of America was finally this is it. We are throwing down the glove. The challenge has been issued. They finally
said, hey, maybe we ought to do something about these boll weevils.
Yeah, they're this is we can't ignore this anymore. This is too big of a deal. So they were we're gonna put in this. They said it was legislation. It was unclear to me if it was just an internal, a bylaw kind of legislation. I mean, that's not what you use bylaws for, but an internal organization kind of legislation, or if it was in connection with a governmental agency. That was a little unclear.
I just think when I hear bylaws of an HOA, they were busy, sorting out the parking lot and deciding what plants to put around the office building. And all of a sudden one day they were like, hey, we got this boll weevil problem that's been lingering for decades.
Address boll weevils.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, but this was actually a really big deal, because apparently this was the first time, at least in this region, that they'd tried to eradicate a crop-specific pest. So they had handled things before with agricultural pests for animals, but not crops. So this was new territory where they're we don't really know how to do this. It was going to take a ton of funding because they were trying to figure out how to do it, which obviously takes a lot of research dollars. And then it was also such a large-scale problem that it was going to take cooperation across governments, across farmers, private industry, research. So it was really this giant collaborative project. So they set out to do this, and their first idea, which is actually an idea that is still used today successfully with boll weevils, it did not work, was the sterile insect technique. So that is where they just get a bunch of sterile males and release them into the wild in the hopes that when the females mate with the sterile males, then obviously nothing will come of it. And it's unclear to me why they're sterile, if it's a if they just somehow breed them to be that way, or chemicals, or it's unclear to me how that is done. If anyone knows, please feel free to let us know.
Little tiny tweezers.
Yeah, maybe. Very time. That's probably why it didn't work. Very time intensive. But yeah, so they basically, it failed because they couldn't outcompete the wild ones. The ladies were not interested, or it just too many, I guess. So that didn't really work. Another option, which they had already been using and actually continued to use along their other methods that they found was basically pesticides, which is, obviously a classic technique. People have varying opinions on whether or not they should be used and to what degree. But at this point in time, they were definitely in the in crowd. And this article said that up to 1/3 of the pesticides in the U.S. in this time period was just for the sake of combating boll weevils, which is a lot.
Yes.
That's so much. And on top of that, there was an increase in the use of pesticides that was from anywhere from 40 to 100% increase. So that's crazy town for statistics. Just really wild. And they were still unbothered. They're like, nope, it's cool, we'll just continue to live and destroy everything you love.
And from the little bit of cursory research I did, these were heavy duty pesticides that you cannot use today. DDT was one of them. There's another one that I forgot the name of it, but it's you can't use that stuff today.
Yeah, very, very harsh pesticides, and a lot of them, and boll weevils were just what? Obviously some of them died, but it was not enough. So, which is actually part of where I don't know if this is actually true, but I feel like it was when I was researching the boll weevil song, is that the lyrics are based on different methods of how they tried to get rid of them. And they were just boll weevils could care less. Couldn't care less. Unbothered. So, but then in the 1960s, we started figuring this puzzle out. So in the 1960s is where they figured out the use of pheromones. So pheromones are chemical cocktails that different plants and animals will use to communicate with each other and do draw each other, direct each other to things. Bees are pretty famous for pheromone use. I think most people probably associate them most with insects and plants, but other kinds of mammals use them. But they're basically signaling chemicals. And so they were able to reproduce a synthetic version of the pheromones that females would use to attract males during mating season, which is just all the time for boll weevils, seems if they've got 10 generations. So what they were able to do then is put the pheromone in traps, and then the male boll weevils would wind up in these pheromone traps. That's also a technique that is used today. It's often used in integrated pest management, which we've talked about on the show before. And so then they were able to trap them and monitor them. That got them a fair amount of the way there. But just because boll weevils are so prolific, they really needed something to get them really high. Mm-hmm. And so then they came up with the reproduction diapause method. So what they figured out there is that boll weevil development is affected by cold. So by doing rapid succession insecticide applications in the fall, they were able to both reduce the numbers of the last generation and then kind of heck them up so that they didn't do so hot over winter. And that actually brought them to really, really high success rates between both of those. So in the 1970s then, so that's a whole decade of development, they started piloting these programs in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana that was 1-2 punching it with pheromones and the reproduction diapause method. They were doing more trials in Mississippi that were kind of partnered with some of the best other methods, probably mostly pesticides at the time. And then another in North Carolina and Virginia. And that one was cool because it was funded. It was half federal dollars, a quarter state dollars, and then a quarter farmer dollars. So that's where you kind of get that fusion of the collaboration and the funding. And within 3 years, only one weevil was trapped in the North Carolina and Virginia region. And they were also that might just be our bad from not cleaning this trap correctly. So they're it might just be a leftover. It might not even be a new one. Which is kind of cute. So extremely, extremely successful to be going from like 10% yield loss to like not a problem at all. And then by 2009...
This keeps going until 2009?
Oh, it goes up until like now. So by 2009, which is 120 years, more or less, after it showed up, that's when they finally were like, we got them, everybody. They're gone, except in parts of Texas, which is kind of a separate issue. So, yeah, so they basically, they eradicated it, and they haven't found a boll weevil in any of their pheromone traps in the last 14 years.
Wow.
Which is really, really good. That's a great job.
So they're not like, they're not like, oh, well, boll weevils eradicated, we don't have to worry about them anymore. They're still testing to see if there's boll weevils out there.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know, like, I didn't see if they were like, now we only have like, 10 traps as opposed to 100 or something. I don't know how many traps they have, but, that's still great news.
Sure. And while they're doing the pheromone traps and stuff, they're also still using the pesticides, right?
Yeah, I think they still are. I'm not sure what, like, obviously, like, pesticide use is going to vary from farm to farm, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it's definitely gone way down, which is nice. So yeah, so that is like a huge success story, pretty much not in America anymore, except for Texas, and the reasons for Texas still having some issues with them is a lot of it is sadly caused by like some like strife along the border. So it kind of causes problems when they're trying to, whether that's getting the technology needed to the farms in Mexico or just being able to like collaborate and communicate. And then also there's other plants besides cotton in Mexico that are really boll weevil friendly. So basically what happens is they just kind of like, we'll just like go hang out in Mexico for a little bit and then see you later. So it's kind of, they just kind of keep coming back over. And there's, bugs are gonna do what they're gonna do. So, but they're still working on it. And again, that is, last we left off was in 2017 on that article. So for all I know, they have like, they just keep moving along and taking care of it. But it's
That's
definitely
amazing.
much more managed, obviously, than it was. And this other like hopeful twist at the end is that the boll weevil now has this kind of like weird, slightly positive legacy in certain ways. So, for example, some of the early federal investments, such as the USDA ARS facility at Mississippi State, was like basically created to take care of the boll weevil problem. And then they're like, oh, sweet, we have this really nice building and like research structure. Let's just keep rolling with that. And so a lot of cool institutions and like federal investments have continued to pay off now as they combat other pests or other agricultural issues. And I also found out that in Alabama, there is a boll weevil monument, which was erected in 1919, which is crazy to me because that's like before they even decided that they wanted to stop it. So that's like in early days where there probably, was some floundering of like, what is happening? This is a new problem. I mean, it didn't fully spread until like 1920, so that's very early on. But the reason for it is because they were like, in hindsight, we really relied on cotton, and that is probably not a good idea long term. So it forced them to diversify their economy and kind of pick up better land management processes and strategies by planting different kinds of crops and rotating them and things like that. Which, as we learned from the Dust Bowl, is, like, super important to do.
Yeah.
So it's this 13-foot-tall woman, and she's got a trophy, and then there's, like, a boll weevil on top of it. And, like, a little plaque that explains, like, thanks, boll weevil, for being a pale that made us change our ways, despite completely ruining some people's livelihoods. So, it's just, like, super bizarre. And also, now that it is gone, the National Cotton Council of America says that eradicating the weevil can bring an increase in yields of about 10% and decrease insect control costs by $30-ish an acre, which when you have a lot of acres is kind of a big deal. I mean, even if you have 1 acre, $30 is nice to keep.
Sure.
And then for people who are like, well, that's kind of sad for the weevil, though. Like, it kind of sucks that they all died for the most part.
Who's saying that?
I don't know. I don't like killing bugs. I mean, just like, I don't like when with any kind of living creature dies. It makes me sad. So obviously they had to go. But on a positive side for other animals, maybe is a better way to phrase that. Their eradication has, in general, lowered the amount of pesticides applied in those areas. This stat says it could be from like 40 to 90% in some areas, which is pretty close to about what it, increased from the boll weevils. So that's obviously great. And it's also then allowed farmers to use other, like, integrated pest management techniques. So some of those are, again, keeping up on the pheromone traps, but also you're not using as many of those insecticides and pesticides allows for beneficial insect populations to kind of recover.
Right. I was just going to say, if you spray poison all over everything, you're going to kill the bugs that you want to kill, but then you're going to kill the bugs that you don't want to kill that feed the birds and the amphibians and the snakes and everything else that's around. You disrupt everything.
Yeah. So it's nice to do less of that and get those beneficial insect populations back up to what they were before, and also to support populations of insects that would be potential predators for boll weevils. If there are any trying to sneak back in to their old stomping grounds, we say no, thank you, please don't. And then also we've had advances in plant breeding to make more resistant crops. So that has been like another, plant breeding takes a long time. So it's been nice to be able to, we can kind of lean on that to help them stay away from us because we don't like them very much. So yeah, that's like the big, long, epic story of boll weevil eradication in America. Even though there's still a problem, but like not nearly as much.
Yeah.
Which is great.
They're making lemons out of millions of tiny little creepy industry destroying little lemons.
Yep. And then make a lemon statue to say thank you, lemons. Thank you, but no thank you, lemons.
I told my wonderful co-host, Donna, I said, I'm going to come on here and talk about boll weevils, and I will send you the picture. She has a boll weevil monument in the town where she grew up.
What?
Yeah, there's a boll weevil, like either a statue or a monument where she grew up. So I'll have to send you that picture. Yeah.
Please do.
I will.
I also now want to call them no thank you, lemons. I would like to put forth as their new. I'll go to the entomology conference with the biscuit weevil people. Be like, can we officially call these no thank you lemons? I would love that very much. That should not be a real thing, but it is to me now.
It's the monument that you just described.
Oh dang!
In Enterprise, Alabama.
Look at that.
And I'm looking at it, it's a woman who kind of looks like the Statue of Liberty, except holding a giant boll weevil on top of her head.
I wonder if they have, like, little ones at, like, gift shops in Enterprise that you can just get a little mini one.
I'd totally souvenir. Buy one. I would absolutely buy one.
Okay. I want royalty if they pick up on that. I'm sure they've already come up with that. But... yeah, so that's what I got on boll weevils. Super interesting little critter. A great success story for science. And just an interesting animal on their own.
Yeah. A triumph in science, in agriculture, and podcasting, as we've proven over the last 30 minutes.
Yep. A sure victory.
That's right.
For spooky times, for Halloween. Well, great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. That was so much
fun. Such a pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for being our special Halloween guest and for having such a great show, being so supportive to other podcasters and being a cheerleader on Twitter and all the other cool things you do. Thanks for being on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I enjoy your show so much, too. You always have just such smart, wonderful people, and it's the show about agriculture that I did not know that I needed, but I love it. I love it so much.
Wonderful. High praise. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. For your special Halloween treat, we are adding on a Rugrats section to this episode. Rugrats is a segment from the Varmints podcast where kids can share anything they want about the featured animal, be it a song, a joke, or some animal facts. For this Rugrats section, we'll be featuring my nephew, Saxton, who is also featured on Varmints in their cicada episode. He'll be sharing some Boll Weevil facts and, by his request, some super scary monster sneezes from his tiny, adorable dog. So, here he is.
Boll Weevils live for 3 years. They are herbivores and they eat cotton. Babies eat roots. The moms can have 100 babies.
Do you think you would eat a boll weevil?
Yeah. And then they can live for 3 years.
Wait, you would eat a boll weevil but not a cicada?
I will eat 3 years.
Thank you to Saxton, and another thank you to Paul for being on our show. Happy Halloween! Thank you for listening to Field Lab Earth. You'll find links to today's resources in our show notes or on our website. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for show topics, please contact us at podcast@sciencesocieties.org or on Twitter @FieldLabEarth. If you'd like to hear more content like this, please subscribe, and don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Stitcher, or anywhere else you find your podcasts if you like our show. This podcast is a joint production of the American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, and Soil Science Society of America. Special thanks to Lobo Loco for the use of their song Spook Castle on the intro and outro of our show. Opinions and conclusions expressed by guests are their own and are not considered as those of the American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, Soil Science Society of America, its staff, its members, or its advertisers.